All right, welcome to Swift Solutions' first webinar. My name is Matthew Fontana, and I'm the application engineer. We're joined by Stephen Waringa today. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Stephen.
Oh, hey guys. Matt, my name is Stephen Waringa. I am the president over here at Swift Solutions, and I'm excited to jump in on this first of many webinars with Matt and I, little Swift talks, chatting about 3D experience, SolidWorks, and all that is engineering.
So today, this webinar is going to be talking a little bit about data management, especially focused on small business and SolidWorks. You could apply this to some just general CAD, but we'll be focusing a little bit more on SolidWorks and the application of data management for small business. So what problems have you had in the past before implementing any kind of data management?
You just want all my problems, or just my data management?
Give me like the top few that really hindered your experience.
Yeah, so we'll talk specifically to 3D, we'll talk SolidWorks. I know later we're going to talk about 3D experience, we'll talk SolidWorks PDM. What I didn't mention in the intro is that, Swift Solutions is a company that helps businesses integrate 3D experience SolidWorks, but really was born out of a need that we saw in the industry from Matt and I both being involved in an engineering firm, which started in 2013 on a card table in my basement. And when we talk data management and small business, whew, Matt, that's a big topic. And it's exciting to, see some of the changes that are coming through over the last couple of years, but things that I have run into. I remember back when, first kind of got started with our contract engineering firm. You had a desktop and you saved everything to your C drive and just tried to keep your folder structure, organized. And once you started seeing red, you're like, shoot, buy an external hard drive, right? And then you start putting things on an external hard drive. That was kind of our progression. And then we moved up from there. Still working on card table, but then got a Synology NAS, so NAS system. So it's basically an external hard drive connected to our Wi-Fi and network system, which worked out really well, right? If you're only moving back and forth a small amount of data, what we're finding with that is it was pretty slow too. So we're saving back and forth was pretty slow, not super secure. We actually even had one of the hard drives, go out on that NAS system. Thankfully, we had it all mirrored back and forth. But if we wouldn't have, and I have a really close buddy that's big into IT. I'm a mechanical engineer like you, Matt, and we kind of try and figure out some of this IT stuff, but sometimes we need to call in the experts. So Thankfully, he's like, oh, you want to make sure that, you have a good hard drive. You want to make sure you're mirroring that back and forth just in case. So thankfully, we had done that. If we hadn't, we would have lost a lot of data. So after the NAS system, which we actually used for a good period of time, we decided that we wanted to start solving the problem of potentially saving over other people's files, right? We were noticing if multiple people are working on a file at the same time, one person is kind of last to save, and we were running into some issues like that.
Yeah, so what was your next steps after you started to solve those problems? What was the next implementation?
I mean, it was really looking into what solutions are out there for data management. And this was, a few years ago, digging into what solutions were available, and what ones would help us with not only the rev control, but also making sure the right people had access to the data, but only the right people. The other people weren't going in and accidentally deleting something or jumping in when they shouldn't have been. So that's what led us. At the time, we had multiple licenses of SolidWorks Professional. So thankfully with SolidWorks Professional and Premium, you get access to some of the SolidWorks PDM standard solutions. So that's what we started looking into and digging into as a potential solution for the contract engineering firm.
So as you moved forward and started to implement that kind of solution, what were some of the major roadblocks that occurred just from the implementation of that?
Well, you know that story, yeah. You're asking the question, but you were there, man. That was a decision on our part that we said, hey, we could hire someone to come in and help out with the installation, give them, pay them to do it, or we could cut our teeth on it. And that's where you kind of came in and helped us out with that.
I'll get into my aspect of it in a minute, but what was some of the hardware troubles and the initial setup troubles that you ran through? I came in with the implementation more so, but what about the initial setup?
Yeah, so from a purchasing, so at that time we still had our NAS system, so network attached storage, which you can't run PDM standard off from or Pro. So we had to upgrade to a different server, and that obviously came with not only a price tag but a learning curve, bringing back in IT support. And I mean, as anyone knows out there that's heavy, I mean, you bring in IT, I mean, you're $120+ an hour to try and get some of this IT stuff figured out, and implementing a new server where really we implemented that server so that we could use PDM, which I know a lot of small businesses are at that point where they're like, hey, we want to utilize PDM, but we have to get a server to do it because you have to have a Windows server. And so, I mean, server costs, we didn't go super high end. I think we have some scalability capabilities that we can scale up. I think it was, between $8,000 and $10,000 to get a server put in here. Well, that's just the hardware cost, and then you have your IT, and then we had implementation from our team too. Like I said, we tried as a team just to take it on and figure it out on our own. I think we had over 160 hours in getting it all, set up and fine-tuned for our process. Again, that's just us going through trying things, trying to figure out, hey, this works really well. This is how we want to use it at the company.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit on that aspect because when I came in, that was one of my earlier tasks was implementing that out to the team. And that was quite a project because PDM is a really powerful tool. There's a lot to it that you can do with it. But there's a lot of customization that you can do. And the initial setup is what takes a lot of that time, getting everything set up in terms of your folder structures and how you want everything to work, your users and your user settings, your vaults and everything like that. So just getting that set up took probably a large portion of that 130 hours was just the implementation of learning it and then getting everybody else to start utilizing it too. And with everybody being new to it at the same time, you run into some initial problems as well in terms of people are checking things out. They don't quite understand how the checkout process works, and then they forget to check it back in and they're gone, and you run into that kind of issue. So not only is it like an implementation of getting it set up, but it's also a problem getting people to use it correctly once you have it set up.
Training and mindset shift for sure.
Yeah, especially I'd say that was one of the hardest things to ingrain into everyone's minds once we were starting to use it was that check-in, check-out process. There was a lot of occurrences.
Oh yeah, I remember coming back into the office. The guys had gone home for the night, and someone's wants to make a change, whether it's from home or I needed to send a file, and that computer that's back at the office didn't have the files checked in, so you have to drive back to the office, go check back in the files. Oh yeah, you're bringing back memories, man.
Yeah, it was. I mean, there was some great aspects in terms of once it started, like everybody started getting on it, the data management started going a lot smoother, especially having that ability to like roll back and aspects such as that. That was huge. Just having that data management. Speaking of that, like once everybody was on the similar page of how to use it and everything, what would you say the biggest improvements that you saw just from implementing any kind of data management system like that would be?
Yeah, I mean, we already, some of that rev control stuff, not having issues of multiple people over saving each other, losing references. There's huge time saving there. You mentioned getting everyone to use it, but the barrier to having them understand how to utilize it was pretty low when it comes to the interface, right? Because you're basically working on a Windows file structure, and that's something people are very familiar with. So as you look at it, it's Like, okay, I'm just saving it a very similar way, and I just have the sidekick next to me that's, making sure that I'm not overwriting someone else's files and I'm naming things correctly because it sends you a flag. Some of the data cards were amazing, being able to standardize some of that kind of pushed us to do a little bit more template creation and standardization. We're at Perception Engineering, we contract engineering firm. So we had multiple different customers. So some of the struggle was every time a new customer came in, we had to create a new data card, create a new, setup for them, which was actually pretty time consuming for each different client that came in. But once it was in the system, it was smooth going.
Yeah.
Other benefits, so like I said, the file structure, like the interface, we didn't utilize workflows that much just because of how many different customers we work on, and we're not working on like a standard product. But I could see huge benefits to companies having that workflow capability. That would be huge. Also from a speed standpoint, right? Because when you're utilizing PDM, typically if you're opening, so for example, the NAS system that I was working on before, we would open up a file and then we'd hit save and it would save back to that system. It wasn't like working locally, and then when you check it back in, then it saves it back to your server. And that's the way that PDM functions. When you check out the file, you're working locally, you can do 5 saves, 10 saves, whatever, that's done locally, and that works pretty quickly. And then you go check it back in, and then it pushes it back out to your server.
Yeah. Do you have any kind of ballpark in terms of like actually monetary costs of like including implementation, hardware, everything? What kind of a impact that would have on a business starting up?
Yeah, I mean, there's a wide range of different servers that you can jump into, and if you kind of went our route and cut your teeth on it and learned through it and actually invested the time into it, we were able to do it at a little bit lower cost. But yeah, 10 to 15 grand to get into it. And again, we had SolidWorks Professional, so we had access to SolidWorks Standard. If you have PDM Standard, if you have SolidWorks Standard, you don't have that access. And then you might talk about like jumping to a PDM Pro scenario, which would then add almost, I think it's like $1,800, $2,000 per instance for PDM Pro. So at that time, I want to say we had 5. So I mean, you multiply that, that's another 10 grand right there.
Yeah, it's definitely, I could see that being a huge struggle for companies that are just starting up, especially the ones that don't really have any kind of budget to spend that kind of money on outside of their tools that they've already got to pay for SolidWorks and everything. That's not cheap to begin with, and you have to.
They're taking food off the table to put into buying SolidWorks.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
What's going on. Yep.
And I mean, there's more than just SolidWorks PDM. There's other solutions out there. There's solutions like, what is it, the Windchill. There's one by GrabCAD. Team Center has one.
Yep.
So there's other solutions out there. SolidWorks PDM is very, very compatible with SolidWorks, obviously, both made by Dassault Systems. And then there's also what we're going to be talking about a little bit today also is ENOVIA tools. So ENOVIAWorks and ENOVIA, you might have heard of some of those. ENOVIA is the original suite that they had for this product lifecycle tools. And then they took a chunk of those out and made ENOVIAWorks, which was specifically put onto the 3D Experience platform. So it's a cloud-based product lifecycle and data management tools that you can utilize your SolidWorks data with. And that it can take care of some of those problems that we were talking about, like check out, check in. You might, depending on where it was checked out, if you're using they have browser-based CAD tools. If you're using some of those to make those changes, it could be on your computer and you could just hop on anywhere and check them back in from any computer, any device. So that would take care of that kind of problem. So it's got some similar feel to SolidWorks PDM, but the ENOVIA tools have a little bit of a advantage in terms of the cloud aspect of it, where you can access it from anywhere. Now there is 3D Experience SolidWorks. If you're using 3D Experience SolidWorks, that still is checked out onto that. The access is checked out onto that computer. So the saves have to be, you still have to save it from that computer up. So if you were on a desktop and you didn't save it from that computer back up to the cloud, then you would run into some problems with that.
Yeah, but you're bringing up, I mean, you're bringing up a really good point with SolidWorks Connected and, saving it back up to the cloud, because that's another thing that we didn't talk about when it comes to some of the issues that we still run into utilizing PDM standard and just, file sharing, right? And collaboration. So you're dealing with people outside and off your network. How do you share files with them?
Yeah.
You're utilizing Dropbox or Grab or a different solution and trying to get them the files. You're doing a pack and go or a copy tree, and you're saving that large file, and then you're sending it to a customer to then download, then open. That process it works, right? It definitely works. It's just, there's opportunities there too.
Yeah. So what's the number one biggest advantage to PDM that you've seen? What would be your singular best benefit from PDM's perspective?
Since we've implemented PDM?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I just keep going back to some of that time saving with rev control and making sure that we're, not missing links and we're not saving back over each other's work. That hasn't really happened since, implementing PDM.
So,
been huge.
Yeah, on that side of things, since you've started looking into this ENOVIA side of things, what would you say comparatively to PDM advantages over PDM?
Yeah, I mean, your access to your data anywhere, cloud-based collaboration. You can do so. I know PDM standard has the ability. We talked about workflows a little bit. PDM standard has the ability to do, I think it's one workflow in 10 states or something like that. Where some of the ENOVIAWorks tools have, the capabilities there as well, which from my research and looking into it, looks a lot easier to set up and implement, and it's not as daunting. Not saying that, once you get into PDM, it's super difficult, but it's
a much more out of the box solution for people jumping into it.
Yeah, it's very configurable, I would say, more than customizable. But yeah, access to the ability to share your data, the ability to, you check it and you set up a workflow, and then you send someone a link to the location of the data, right? Yeah. It's a different way of thinking about it. You're not setting up a workflow and then you're loading it into Dropbox and then you're sending someone a pack and go. You're just sending someone a link to the data to view the data, and then they can mark it up, right? They don't need they can log in to the 3D Experience platform, do their markups, and then save it and save their markups, and it's right there. Like, there's not that upload download time with, transferring that data.
Yeah, and for everybody watching, when he says they can load it up on their browser, they can actually load a 3D model that they can pan around, similar to what you'd experience in maybe like eDrawings or some similar 3D viewer like that.
Yeah, and PDM, has some of those like capabilities, right? You have the little eDrawings viewer, but that's not something that when you share your data that the client sees, or that someone that doesn't have PDM, on their computer sees. Where working with the ENOVIAWorks tools and 3D Experience platform, you can do that.
And that could be especially helpful. Say you're sharing it with somebody that doesn't have administrative rights. They can't download any software. So if they can't download a viewer or anything, then they have to go through IT. Then they're waiting a day to get to access to even view the model you sent them. Whereas this, you just send them a link, open it right up in that browser, and then they can do the markup, send you any requests or anything like that just directly from that. And then that also prevents them from, say, making a change on that, anybody making a change on a file that you sent them, sending it back, and now you have this mixed up data stream. Whereas this is just a singular source of truth. You send them that direct access to the data that you are also working on. So you never get that disconnection, and never have any two versions of the same file floating around at different states.
Oh yeah. Yep. Again, flashbacks, man.
Yeah.
Pre-PDM world.
Is there anything, we're getting a little bit close. We're going to be doing a demo here in a minute. I'm going to walk you through some of the tools, but is there, as a last thoughts, any kind of, not necessarily major disadvantages, but, or PDM has advantages over ENOVIA? Do you see anything like that, where somebody might think of PDM over ENOVIA?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. I guess if you're already set up, you already have your workflows, and you're utilizing PDM Pro already, and you have already gone through that implementation and customization, already have gone through all of that upfront investment, then I would say that there's, that you should, from what I'm looking at right now, stick with that tool if it's working for you.
Yeah.
Where there is that, on the flip side of that, if you haven't gone through and you're a smaller business that is looking at that investment and like, hey, I would really love to take care of data management. We see this issue, but that barrier to entry is too high. The barrier to entry for this 3D Experience platform and 3D Experience SolidWorks and ENOVIAWorks is not anything near that.
Yeah. That's definitely what I would say as well. As going through and actually using this, it's just so easy to get started with. If you had that system and you already spent all of the money getting that set up already, then it might not be worth it. But the ENOVIAWorks side of things on the 3D Experience platform is just so quick and easy to get going. So if you're ready to get started on a project, it's a great way to get started. So any final closing thoughts before I head off to the demo?
No, I'm excited to watch it.
Yeah, thanks for joining.
Yep.
So now let's take a look at a quick demo on some of these tools in use. So let's start with 3D Space. 3D Space acts as a database for all of your project data. You can create collaborative spaces, and within each of these collaborative spaces, you can separate it based on project, or you can just have a single collaborative space for all of your projects where all of your project data will be contained in a single collaborative space. Now you can, this is depending on your company policy and how you want to set it up. So it's a bit customizable in that aspect. But I've created one here called Drone Project, and inside you can see that I have a drone assembly and all of the components are contained within it. Now, if you contained hundreds and hundreds of project data within this one collaborative space, you might be thinking it could be hard to find, and that's where the search capability of 3D Experience comes in. It's very extensive. Also, the bookmark editor, the next app here, on the dashboard, allows you to create bookmarks, which would be more similar to your traditional file explorer. So let's create one for the drone project. Just call this drone project. And by going and entering into it, you can just click and drag parts. So let's just click and drag the drone assembly. And you can see here that the drone assembly has been added to that bookmark. Now, whenever I want to work on the drone project, I can just go to that bookmark, and you can see you can drop down and see all the parts contained within that assembly. So that makes it really convenient to put your frequently accessed files for each project within a project's bookmark, and that can therefore act as your access point when you're working on projects. You can also access your lifecycle tools as well as reserve and unreserve right within the app. Next, let's take a quick look at the collaborative lifecycle app. So with this, you can just drag and drop. So let's just drag and drop the drone here into the collaborative lifecycle. You'll see the same tools at the bottom there is in the bookmark editor as well as the collaborative lifecycle. And you'll notice that within various apps, there's a lifecycle capabilities. So in terms of the workflows, you'll see that the released and frozen states it will depend on your access level. Some people can move directly from in work to release, and some people can only move from in work to frozen and wait for approval to be moved to released. The difference between using the revision tools at the bottom of the toolbar here in this app, as well as any other apps, is you're able to see in this window here the revision history. So as you add revisions, you'll see a map of how your part has progressed through these revisions. And that can be beneficial if you're trying to keep track of your history. So let's take a look at Issue 3D Review. Let's go ahead and drag the drone on over to Issue 3D Review. And when you add that, it will show up as a 3D model, and it's fully interactive, so you can pan around it just like you would in a CAD tool. And you can look for any issues that you may have with the model. So once you find an issue, you can just go ahead and click New Issue. However, let's provide some context first, actually. So let's go ahead. The issue is that this is not quite the right measurement. So let's go ahead and use the Measure tool and put a measurement on here. And we see that it's 144 millimeters. We want this to be 160. So let's go ahead and add a new issue. And you can just go ahead and enter in the title, add a description, and add the recommended procedure to fix the issue. You can then add any other information such as priority and due date, and then move on to the next step, which is related objects. With related objects, you have reported against and contexts. Reported against is the issue that you actually have, the item that you actually have the issue with. Context is the larger picture. So here we'll pick the propeller as the issue, and you'll see the fly out here. We want the impeller blade, not the drone. So we'll click on that and a marker will appear, and the context is automatically picked as a drone because that is a larger picture. This propeller is in context of that drone. Then we can move on to members and add an owner, co-owners, assignees, and responsible organizations. As a default, can be assigned to yourself. You can see information about what each of these do to the right here. And then you can add any attachments that, such as specification documents or any additional attachments. You can even take a screenshot directly of the 3D review app here. So let's just highlight this measurement that we stated was wrong and take a screenshot, and it will automatically be attached. Once it is attached, you can move on to the finalize stage, in which you'll have the option to change to approval or create a template. These are optional, so you can, once you decide on those, you can just go ahead and either save as a draft or start the issue. And when you start the issue, you'll notice that it is immediately moved into the issue management app. And the issue management app not only shows your issue for one part, but it shows all of your issues. So this will be a great place to keep track of the status of all of your issues all at once. You can click on an issue and you'll be able to see the information over to the right. And in the issue 3D review, you'll see that there's markers for these issues now. And anybody that loads this model into the issue 3D review will be able to see these markers, hover over them, and see the issue that it's associated with. By clicking on the issue itself, you can either decrease or increase the information window that is on the right here. And then you'll be able to go through these tabs and see the summary information, the item that is reported against, as well as any attachments, and you can even keep a thread of comments or history of the issue as it goes through its life cycle states. Now, if your company handles changes through official change orders, you can add this to a change action. So let's just go ahead and add this to a change action, and a window will pop up where the information is automatically filled in for you. Once you choose a due date and the severity, you can either save it as a draft or begin work, and we'll jump on over to the change action app. Just need a quick refresh here. And there it is. So once it pops up, you can click on it just like you did with the issue to open it up, and you can see all the information associated with it. So here you have the summary information. You can go over and see members, and you can add new members to the change action, and you can add them as assignees who will be completing the action, approvers who will be approving the action, and informed users who will just be notified as there is lifecycle changes. Once you have that, you can change the maturity directly from the change action itself. So you don't even have to take it to the lifecycle app. You can just click on maturity and change it to the next state if it's ready. Then we have the proposed changes tab. In this, you will see the items that are going to be changed. So in this case, it's the impeller blade, and that is the item that will be updated. And then in the next tab, we have the realized changes. And the realized changes are any changes that have been completed since the start of this change action. So that could be an update and revision or a change in the CAD model. And in this case, we will be updating the revision and changing the CAD model. So both of those would appear as realized changes once completed. And then, excuse me, you then have the attachments referentials tab, which will have the attachments from the, if you brought it in from an issue, automatically from the issue, as well as the context automatically brought in from the issue. So lastly, we have the collaborative tasks, and as a change action is brought into work or any other tasks are assigned to you, they will automatically show up in this Kanban style board where you can keep track of all of your tasks regardless of the project, change action, so on and so forth, or you can just create ones for yourself. So let's just create one, organize the data, something just to show the functionality. And once you open it, you'll see the tab here where you're able to change a title, add a description, add a context, just as you did with the issue. You can change the maturity state between draft, to do, in work, approval, or completed. You can also do this by clicking and dragging on the Kanban style board. You can add a due date. You can add a duration in days or hours, add assignees, attachments, and whoever the assignee is can add files here for deliverables for people viewing the task. You can also see the originator and owner, and if you want to see more information on that person, you can even go into properties for that person specifically. So there's a lot of functionality that you can do here, And if you would like to assign to yourself comments, you can do comments here and have a thread of conversation with people that are involved in the task, as well as automatically assign to yourself, or just go straight to completion or delete right from the top of that window bar. Really accessible and very convenient. Now that's just a very brief overview of just some of the tools found on the 3D Experience platform. And not only was this just some of the tools for the data management aspect, that's just some of the functionality of 3D Experience as a whole. If you'd like to learn a little bit more on what 3D Experience is, an overview, we have a totally free course. Go on over to Swift Academy on our site. You can find it as Introduction to 3D Experience. It's very top level, just gives you an overview on the full functionality of the 3D Experience platform. So thank you so much for joining us at our first webinar. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to reach out. We'll be more than happy to help.